Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast. BrightWord is a leading platform for diverse storytelling, where voices from all backgrounds can share their unique narratives and connect with readers from around the world. Follow our regular podcast updates, where we strive to foster a literary community that celebrates creativity, inclusivity, and the transformative power of literature.
Welcome to the BrightWord Books Podcast, where books spark ideas and ignite conversations. Today, we're diving into a thought-provoking discussion on politics, race, and the impact of progressive policies on Black America. Joining me is Brian Oglesby, author of Progressives, Leftists, and Black America. His book explores whether these policies have truly helped or harmed Black communities. Whether you agree or not, this conversation will challenge assumptions and inspire critical thinking. Let's get started. First of all, Brian, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
To kick things off, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
I graduated from high school in Centerville, in East St. Louis, Illinois, Assumption High School. Then I went to Lincoln University in Jefferson City, Missouri, where I got a degree in business administration. Then I went in the military, active military for 5 years, and I stayed in the Army Reserves for almost another 30 years.
Oh, 30 years.
And when I was in the reserves, I was activated 3 times. So I did almost 9 years of active duty. And while I was in the reserves, I went back to college again and got me another degree in biology, but it was specialized from cell and molecular for genetic engineering.
And so what inspired you to write this book, and what message do you hope readers will take away from it?
Before I wrote this book, what impresses me is immigrants have been coming to the United States, and they're just doing a whole lot better than Black people are in business creation and in acquiring degrees, especially advanced degrees in chemistry and biology, and advanced degrees in mathematics and engineering. And they're just really doing a whole lot better. And I couldn't understand why that happened. And so I had been looking at a lot of articles online, and I had been listening to podcasters. I had been listening to pastors. I had been listening to experts in the field of African American studies, and nobody could tell me this. And I started digging a lot deeper and finding some more pieces to the puzzle. And then I came to something else, another movement. It was a secret one that I had never heard of before. And I started researching it more, and it was about the progressive left-wing movement in America, and about how progressives were around in America years before the Woodrow Wilson administration. There were progressives in America before the Civil War. And the progressives had their interests in the Black community, in Black people before then, because of the struggles that Black people had, because they hated this country, because some of them were Marxists, some of them were socialists, and they didn't like this country. And so they wanted to destroy this country.
In your book, you argue that progressive policies have been detrimental to Black America.
Yes.
Could you elaborate on some of those key policies or ideologies you believe have had this negative impact?
Okay, one of them was the feminist movement, and another one was integration. And during the feminist movement, Margaret Sanger, she was a eugenicist. And so Planned Parenthood was what she invented. Now, why do I think that the feminist, how can I connect the feminist movement to that? Because of abortion. And Black people African Americans are only 12 or 13% of the population, but they've been about a third of all the abortions in this country. So that took a big bite out of the population, the Black population. And another thing was the educational system. Now, the feminist movement, when it first started, it was actually, and the progressives back then were actually really good for Black people, because the progressives back then, a lot of them were anti-slavery. They were really anti-slavery. Some of them were abolitionists, were really fierce abolitionists, whereas the more conservative white person, back then, more conservative whites, they liked the country's free market capitalism, its constitutional republic, the fact that it was built on Judeo-Christian values. And so they didn't want that to change. But they also had some ideas about race that they didn't want to change either. They wanted those to stay traditional. So Black people would be an inferior, subordinate group of people.
I wanted you to help me out here. How do you define progressivism and leftism in the context of your book?
In the book, okay. Progressivism is more of political and societal reforms. And leftism is just about ideologies and redistribution of resources. And so they're different. Progressivism had to do with the changes in society that was made during the feminist movement, and some good things happened for women. They got a chance to vote, and before that, sometimes women, their testimonies didn't mean as much in court, or they didn't make as much money as men. And if she was, in some cases, if she was married, her husband had marital rights over all of her things, over any properties that she inherited. Years ago, that was the case. It's not now. The NAACP, they fought for civil rights for Black people, and that was a good thing. It was that organization was started by progressives. Now, leftism is another thing. It's a range of ideologies, and it's for redistribution of wealth and resources. So it covers some different bases. So with ideologies, I go over a lot of things in the book. I go over things like how liberalism and leftism are different, and rethinking integration and DEI and the educational system and the prison industrial complex and some other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As an author, did you face any personal challenges or pushback for writing a book that critiques progressive ideologies, especially given the common association between leftist policies and support for civil rights and equality?
I haven't had a lot of it right now, but it's a subject that once the book gets more notability to it, and once people find out more about it, I'm expecting to have pushback against it. I'm expecting to have a lot of pushback. But right now, at this point, no, because a lot of people don't really know what I'm doing, But yeah, I'm expecting some pushback against it.
What research data or personal experiences led you to conclude that progressive policies have harmed Black Americans? Were there any surprising findings during your research?
There were some problems that I found during my research. You can drive anywhere in the United States, and it's obvious that usually, most of the times, in a white neighborhood, the living conditions and everything are better. The schools are better. There's more job opportunity. And this doesn't exist as much in the Black community, especially in certain little pockets in the Black community. It doesn't exist because with integration, there was a debate in 1900 between two icons in the Black community. One was W.E.B. Du Bois, and the other one was Booker T. Washington. That's the guy. Mm-hmm. Booker T. Washington, his argument was that Blacks shouldn't try and integrate with whites. They should cast their bucket down where they are, and they should provide and make strong Black communities of their own, and they shouldn't try and integrate. But W.E.B. Du Bois, his argument was that Blacks should integrate with whites and be a part of white society and be a part of their institutions and be a part of their organizations and everything. Now, back then, Booker T. Washington, he founded the Tuskegee Institute in Tuskegee, Alabama, and Blacks went there and they learned trades and skills that made them useful in society so they could contribute. And he also created the Negro Business League in Tulsa, Oklahoma, in the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And he was there for years. And he was there, and a lot of Blacks came there after slavery. And they built that community. And their money exchanged hands between 38 and 100 times, in some cases, before leaving in that community. And they generated a lot of wealth in that community. Some of the Blacks generated some wealth. And they produced a lot of jobs for themselves. And they did really good. And this was when everything was really segregated. Booker T. Washington, in a free market with capitalism, a constitutional republic, you need to have an economy. You need to have economic influence. And that's what he was doing with the Negro Business League. So Black people, and if you have economic influence, then you can go to your politicians and you can sit down and talk to your politicians and say, this is what we want. This is the changes we need to have. We need to have a bill sent to Congress for this. If you have economic influence, and then you can go to law enforcement and you can demand changes in law enforcement, and life is a lot better for you. And it's better for the individual and it's better for the community. And I used to go to Chicago every summer, or most summers, not every summer, a lot of summers we went to Chicago. And the last time I had been in Chicago before then was in 97. I went to the lakefront to Navy Pier. And I wanted to see what the lakefront looked like again. Had it changed any? But this is in 2014. Well, on my way there, I drove through the Hispanic community's neighborhood in Chicago. It was called the Little Village neighborhood. And you could see their ethnic restaurants and their ethnic shops, and everything seemed like it was owned by Hispanics. I could see everything in English and Spanish, and the murals written all over the buildings. They really looked like something out of Mexico City. And I roll down my windows and I hear the mariachi music. And these communities, these businesses produce these services, and they produce a lot of jobs and a lot of opportunity for a community. These ethnic communities do.
And you felt that was ahead of what you were seeing in your own community?
The Black community, you never see anything like that in the Black community. And from progressive causes, when in that debate, W.E.B. Du Bois won the debate. And you could integrate Black people into society, but you had, especially, and they started with the public schools. You could do it with the Brown versus Board of Education decision. And you could integrate Blacks in society in a lot of places, but you have to redistribute some wealth and expand public institutions. And so since Black people don't have those ethnic communities that produce a tax base and that really give you this ability to decide the direction politically and socially that a community goes to, the trends that are going to be taking place in a big city like Chicago, since we don't have communities like that, it leaves us dependent on jobs outside of the Black community. They want everybody dependent on government.
Now, in the book, you do offer critiques, but do you also propose alternative policies or solutions that might better address the needs of Black Americans?
Black Americans, if they started doing what the Hispanics did. As an example, build their own communities. Start with economics first. In a free market with capitalism and a constitutional republic, first they need to start with economics. And then, after you build an economy with businesses and those for-profit institutions.
What do you think needs to change within the Black community's relationship with politics for positive change to occur?
Economics. We're going to have to develop us an economy in our communities like the Hispanics did. And another thing we're going to have to do is we already have some politicians in the community that mean well, that are doing good things for the community, or that are trying to, but almost all of them are Democrats. Almost all of them belong to the Democrat Party. And I think if we threw some more Republicans in, they were abolitionists from slavery, and they've made a lot of good points they've done a lot of good things for the Black community. They freed the slaves, the 13th Amendment, the 14th and the 15th Amendment. Those were all done by Republicans. And I think the Republican Party is a better party.
Do you think your critique of progressive policies extends beyond Black America?
Okay, I'll say this much. Yes, they can learn from the Black community, because the country is going in a direction that's bad. This could be a warning to the rest of the country that we need to change, because we're going in a direction that's not a good direction.
How do you view the current political climate regarding race relations and social justice movements in America? And do you think the left is shifting its stance in response to your arguments?
In lieu of the current political climate now and race relations, I think it's making race relations worse. I think we're going backwards in race relations. They're getting worse than they have been for the past 5-10 years. I don't know, maybe 15. We're going backwards. And I don't think the left is really changing. I think the left is really making things worse with their policies and causes. I think they're really accelerating this to make it worse. Because if you have divisions in society, it makes it easier for you to institute anything to control. Unfortunately, but that's what I believe.
Well, Brian Oglesby, thank you so much for your time and your insights on this. I greatly appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay. Brian Oglesby's book, Progressives, Leftists, and Black America. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the BrightWord Books Podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite platform. Leave us a rating or review to help others find us. Follow us on Facebook and visit brightwordbooks.com for updates. Thank you for listening.
You've been listening to the BrightWord Books Podcast, home of the literary community that celebrates creativity, inclusivity, and the transformative power of literature. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss future episodes. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.